Good morning to everybody. I'm glad to be here today at this conference and to have the opportunity to represent my unit, the Future and Emerging Technologies unit at the European Commission. I'm a program officer there, have been doing this for about 2 years, and I will guide you in the next 20 minutes or so through our funding program. And we'll do this first by giving you right away our mission statement. What are we looking to fund? What do we want to fund? And what are our core values? To make it more concrete, I will give you a few examples of projects that embody this mission and these values that we care about. Our funding program, Future Emerging Technologies, is not something that is set in stone. It changes over time. It has been changing in the last 10 years quite a lot. And I will give you a little bit the history also of what we have been doing and how things have been changing. And an important element that has been surfacing recently is initiatives that are big in scale. And we heard already about one, the Human Brain Project. We will hear about other ones as well. And to finish this presentation, I will just briefly mention what is one of the maybe hot topics that we're discussing in our unit, in our funding program, more generally at the European Commission, and its innovation, which is a very loose term, and our work on this topic. All right, so we at the European Commission, for some reason, are very fond of in putting a lot of text in our slides, but really maybe the picture that is here tells more about our mindset in terms of funding program. So we, as a funding program, we want to fund first of all, teams of people, not individuals, teams of people that want to do breakthrough research and uncover radically new possibilities for technologies. And by doing this, we want to make Europe one of the leading places in this kind of research. And as the picture shows, we are willing to take risk with these teams of people and to give credit to their bold proposals. We have a set of, let's say, values or gatekeepers, as we call them, that enshrine a little bit what kind of research we'd like to fund. So we are, first of all, a funding program that funds projects that have a long-term vision. So you want to have an idea that goes beyond the duration of your project, something you want to achieve something over 10, 15, 20 years. At the same time, the type of research that you envision has to contain some breakthrough elements. We do not want to fund just incremental research. We want to open up new possibilities. And in this sense, we are looking for a foundational type of research and novelty, which, as a result, means that we are taking on maybe more risk than other funding programs at the European Commission and are willing to do so. An element that is very specific to future and emerging technologies, and that has been for a long time so, is its interdisciplinary character. So we want to bring together teams of people who set out to do a challenging research work and to tackle a breakthrough that will enable, or will take you one step further towards the vision that the team has set. And in particular, we want to bring together people with different backgrounds and make them work together in teams. So what does it mean in practice? These are all very nice words. So I want to show you a set of examples, projects from the past and also from the present that somehow show what we mean by that. So here is one which actually is not contained in one project that we funded, but stretches over the last, I think the first project that we funded on this topic is from 10 years ago, even more. But even today, we continue to fund this, this type of project, which is the development of Cyberhand that has the ability to restore sensory feeling. So this is something that took a lot of time to develop, but very recently they were able to demonstrate this on an actual patient. And so you can imagine the complexity of this idea. You have to bring together people from very different backgrounds. You have to bring together doctors. You have to bring together software engineers. You have to bring together people that know how the brain processes the information that comes from the hand, and you have to make them work together. So this is a challenge itself, but this is one example of the type of projects we are funding. Another one is in a similar area is Hive, which also, let's say, developed wireless EEG and neurostimulators, and did so by starting out doing research in that area and developing this research knowledge into a spin-off, neuroelectrics, and then finally into a product that can be sold. Another example here is the body on a chip. This is another project I think that's just finished, that is led by an SME based in Switzerland, where they developed, so typically the drug testing is done at some stage during the development of the drug on 2D tissues. This has limitations, so a step forward is to develop 3D tissues, which gives more reliable feedback especially on the toxicity of the drug. And then if you want to go even further, you can organize different types of tissues on a chip and simulate the interactions between the different types of tissues. So you have a tiny bit of liver, a tiny bit of heart tissue, a tiny bit of other tissue, and they're all connected, and you can simulate the effect of the drug on this miniaturized body on a chip. How have we been implementing our program? Traditionally, we had two schemes. One is FET Open. FET Open means that we are not at all prescriptive about what a proposal should be about. Typically, what the Commission does, it writes a text, what we call a work program, which says, okay, we will be funding these topics, these research topics, In FET Open, we don't do that. We give some guidelines, like the gatekeepers, which kind of sets the scene of what kind of research we are looking for. But then we are not at all prescriptive about if you want to do research in neuroscience, in nanoscience, energy, whatever. You come up as a researcher with your own idea, you put together your own team, and you submit a proposal. So what we call the bottom-up approach. And then we have the proactive approach, which we call top-down, but it's not really top-down, because even when the Commission writes a work program, it's always after consultation with the science and research community. So we ask the community at large, what do you think is important? What should we fund? We get the responses, we organize them in a text, and then this becomes the official document. And they have been sharing the same values. Proactive was meant to be, or is meant, because it's still there, to be an element of the funding program where you shape a community, where you help a community to form itself, to create an identity. Whereas FET Open is basically a project-based funding program with no very loose interactions between different projects funded. Later on, during FP7, which means Framework Programme, which is some kind of internal way of measuring our programming, a new type of initiative emerged. The flagships, which are large-scale, long-term initiatives which address very grand scientific challenges. And in the previous speaker mentioned here and there during his presentation Human Brain Project, which is, as you will see later, one of the two that we have selected and are now funding. Okay, so a little bit of background history of FET. We have been around for many, many years, but let's not go just back to the very beginning. Let's go back just to the previous programming period, which was FP7. We funded some 320 projects during the 7 years, pretty much across Europe, with a total budget of roughly, I have always to make the addition there, it takes a few seconds, of 820 million euros. Until then, FET was pretty much focused on ICT. So if you were submitting a proposal, research proposal to future emerging technologies, it had to be somehow related to information communication technologies. It was quite loose, the definition, but somehow it had to be related. Since 2014, since last year, we have a new programming period, which we call H2020, which has a quite large budget of almost 80 billion euros for research and innovation, and is organized around 3 pillars. Excellent science, which is more like the basic science pillar, industrial leadership, industrial, well, as it says, and then social challenges. And FET belongs to now to the excellent science pillar, together with other very well-known funding programs like the European Research Council, Marie Curie actions, and research infrastructures. And as you see now, in the new program period, we have been awarded a much larger budget. It's an increase of 3.5 times over the previous program period. So we're running now a budget of, until 2020, of 2.7 billion euros, which has been taxed with the Juncker package, but still, it's very big. And 40% of that, over the course of the next years until 2020, will be reserved for FET Open projects. And if you go into the legal text of the H2020, you will see that the mission, again, of Future Emerging Technologies is to extend Europe's capacity for advanced and paradigm-changing innovation. Basically, it's pathfinding Europe's technological future. And so our ambition, really, over the next few years is to rise from an ICT-centered program to a much broader program, which includes all disciplines, not just ICT, not just limited to ICT, and becomes the program of reference for collaborative research, and able to provide thought leadership in the technological area at European level. And on top of that, I mentioned it before, we have started with new large initiatives, the flagships. 2 have been selected, Graphene and Human Brain Project, and another one, the HighPerformance Computing Public-Private Partnership, which I will be describing a little bit more detail later on. So how are we doing in extending from ICT to other disciplines? This is a breakdown of one of the first calls that we organized in FET Open. We received 640 submissions, submissions for roughly 80 million euros. The success rate this is a very competitive call. Success rate is below 5%. But you see, we are doing quite okay in terms of attracting the interest of the wider community that stretches beyond ICT, just ICT, attracting people working in the energy sector, medicine, nanoscience, materials. In an exercise, as I described before, where we consult the community about the topics that are important to be funded inside Future Emerging Technologies, we also try to expand our horizon and include other areas. And so this is a first, let's say, result of the consultation that we did already 1 year ago, I think, where you see that also new topics beyond ICT are present. And so the really new thing in FET since it started already in 2009, is this large-scale initiatives. And flagships, the FET flagships are certainly a very good example of that. It started in 2009 by stimulating ideas and with initial structuring of scientific community. 6 proposals were competing, and then finally 2 were selected. And we have already heard a lot about the Human Brain Project, which is one of the 2 that have been selected. Graphene is the other one. And Graphene Flagship, well, I guess you're familiar with the material. It's a monatomic sheet that has amazing electrical and mechanical properties. The possible applications are very are a lot, and so we are going to be funding this flagship for the next 10 years, and we are just at the start now. Really, the activity is ramping up. The Human Brain Project is the second one. Has been selected, that is being funded. Overall budget for each one is 1 billion euros. And so the impact that both Graphene and Human Brain Project can have on science and beyond science are huge. Just to mention for the Human Brain Project, we heard already a lot in terms of computing, what it can do, but also in medicine, in understanding the diseases, brain diseases. It can have huge impact. The third initiative, large scale, that has started, and it has been works for a while and now has started since last year, is high-performance computing. This is an area that is now developing quite fast. It has been around, of course, for many decades, setting the pace for ever-increasing speed and computing capacity by renewing constantly the architectures and the software used to run these supercomputers. And we are implementing this large-scale initiative through a different scheme, which is called Public-Private Partnership, which is also something new in H2020, which basically are initiatives that stretch over 10 years or so as well, and are identified topics that have strategic importance for the Union. And so there are 9 running plus a 10th one, which is on micro and nano electronics. And in different areas, we have photonics, robotics, big data, European green vehicles, and since 2014, high-performance computing. Just briefly, without going to the details of what we're doing, but the initiative is organized around the strategy with 3 main elements. One, which is implemented in future emerging technologies, is to fund the development of the next generation supercomputers, which will be exascale. So today, the fastest computers are in the 10th of petaflops. The aim is to reach 1 exaflop by 2022, 2023. And we are funding this. We are funding this effort over the next 7 years. Another part is facilitating the access to the supercomputing infrastructure in Europe, which is implemented through a program called PRAISE, which basically gives access to researchers and industry to supercomputing facilities based also on a peer-reviewed competitive calls, where you submit a proposal to do a certain computation on supercomputers, and it gets reviewed and approved. And then we also are establishing centers of excellence for HPC applications, which are not physical centers, but are networked centers of excellence, where we want to develop the skills and the expertise necessary to achieve excellence in this area. This is a first, so we have already made 2 calls, one for FET HPC, one for the Centers of Excellence. And this is just a first snapshot of the application areas that came out from the proposals that we are going to be funding. And I tried to organize them with different colors and positioning them also on the slide according to, let's say, not the importance, but the recurrence. In the center are the most recurrent one. And the yellow, if it's yellow, then it's a FET HPC proposal. If it's red, it's a Center of Excellence proposal. So you see that at the center, many proposals identify material science and numerical weather forecasting or numerical weather prediction as the challenges, the areas of applications which has most promise for supercomputing and to give benefit for with supercomputing capacities. And this is interesting because also recently a US report identified these 2 same areas as the ones to focus for development of exascale machines. And of course, US also has the nuclear stockpile stewardship, which is another area which is important for them. But also spiking neural networks come up quite frequently, as we heard in the previous talk. And then there's a range of other areas and topics like astrophysics, high energy physics, healthcare, and finance, for example. So there's a range of applications where we are hoping to have and make an impact by funding the development of machines and of centers of excellence and of facilitating the access to these resources. But this is a question that is now very important. How do we translate excellence in science and research into something that can be used more widely? And so we have been asking ourselves this question, which means that we have been organizing workshops to asking basically you these questions. And it's not easy. It's a puzzle, as the picture shows that. It's not easy the answer is not easy. There you have a few elements that show what could be done, like, of course, network events, include SMEs, some kind of 2-stage funding where the teams are allowed to continue to work on something that is successful. So we are now in the process of taking in information, digesting it, and coming up over the next year with something new. But in the shorter term, we are already trying to do so by implementing what we call coordination support actions, which are actions that are supposed to help research projects to interact, to increase the impact. And so we have already in this work program, we are already funding what we call the FET Tech Up, which is an action which is meant to help research projects to increase the impact of their research results. We will have in the future innovation, what we call the innovation launch pad, which is top-up actions on FET projects. So if you were awarded a FET project, you will be able to apply to a second proposal where you plan to somehow take advantage of the results outside the research world. And then a greenhouse, innovation greenhouse initiatives that is supposed to help the launchpad and coordinate the innovation actions among the present and future research projects. Last slide, and then I'm done. In October, we organized a conference in Lisbon from the 20th to the 22nd. This is our major event of our DG Connect, where you will be able to, if you participate, to interact with me and my colleagues, to exhibit. We have exhibitions, we have a conference, and it's basically a major event that we have, I think, every 2 years. And, well, that's it. If you want more information, we have a dedicated web page. We are present on Twitter and active. And we have also a mailbox where you can reach us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.